Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Hayward. I'm the Community Engagement Officer working in Bath for Baines Council. I'm delighted today to have Richard Stone, Carew, and Alice Nunn with us, who are going to be talking you through the launch of the local plan. We have a PowerPoint presentation, first of all, which Richard will be running through from the start with you. And once we have completed that, we've had some questions submitted which we'll be running through. If there's any others you'd like to submit throughout, we'll capture those in the chat or the question and answers, and if we have time we'll come to them. Otherwise we can get back to you if they're more specific type questions that require a bit more of a full-on answer for you. So what I'm going to share the screen with the presentation, and Richard will start running through, and then we'll come back to the questions in about 20 minutes time.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'll just wait for the slides to come up. Thank you. So yeah, good afternoon, everybody, and obviously welcome to the webinar on the local plan launch document. So the launch document has recently been published for consultation, and it formally marks the start of preparing a new local plan for Bath North East Somerset. So along with my colleagues Carew and Alice, we're going to give a short presentation which will outline the scope of the local plan, the proposed primary ambitions or priorities that it needs to address, the programme for preparing the plan, as well as the evidence base sitting behind it, and the process for engaging communities and other stakeholders in preparing it. So just to say from the outset, the council is really keen to give communities a bigger say in preparing the plan. So next slide, please, Mark. So what is a local plan? So basically a local plan, it's really the key planning policy document which guides and facilitates change and development over a 15 to 20 year period. And it's aimed at ensuring that we maintain and create vibrant, healthy and sustainable places in which to live and work. So for those that don't know, in the UK, we operate what's called a plan-led system. So this means that basically all planning applications are determined in accordance with the local plan. So you can see from that the local plan is a really important document in providing the framework for deciding all planning applications. So within Baines, the current policy framework is mainly provided by the adopted core strategy and placemaking plan, and both of those plans cover a period up to 2029. So the core strategy sets the overall amount of development that needs to come forward and a spatial strategy for delivering it. And the placemaking plan provides the details, so it identifies and allocates sites for development and sets out more detailed policies for determining planning applications. And the core strategy and placemaking plan are supported by a number of other supplementary documents. So, for example, relating to sustainable construction or development in the greenbelt, etc. There's quite a few of those. We should just say, really, that obviously Baines doesn't just exist on its own. It's part of a wider sub-region, very closely linked to Bristol. And some of you may be aware of something called the West of England Combined Authority. So that covers Bath North East Somerset, Bristol City Council and South Gloucestershire Council. And the West of England Combined Authority, or WECA as it's sometimes known, was preparing a sub-regional or spatial development strategy. So that our local plan in Baines was being prepared within the context of and to deliver that spatial development strategy. However, earlier this year, the WECA mayor decided to halt work on the spatial development strategy, and therefore it won't be pursued at this point in time. And the local plans covering this district, so Bath North East Somerset, Bristol and South Gloucestershire, they will together provide the strategic planning framework for the combined authority area. and the three authorities are committed to working together on our local plans. Next slide, please, Mark. So in terms of the scope of the new local plan, it's anticipated it will cover the period from this year through to 2042. So it will be covering a 20-year period. And importantly, it's a plan that covers the whole of Bath, North East Somerset. And it will establish how much housing and economic development needs to come forward, set out a strategy for delivering that development, as well as identifying and allocating specific sites. It will also set out a policy framework relating to the quality and sustainability of development, as well as protecting and enhancing our high quality natural and built environment within the district. Next slide, please, Mark. So in the launch document, the council has outlined 4 primary ambitions for the local plan and a series of other key issues that it needs to address. We would welcome your comments on those primary ambitions and other issues, but I'll run through them in a little bit more detail now. So just to say, crucially, the local plan is centred very much on places, but more particularly people, and really is there to help facilitate the council's sort of primary purpose of helping to improve people's lives. So centred, taking that as the central point, the 4 primary ambitions, 2 of them relate to helping to address the climate and ecological emergencies. So ensuring that policies, but more particularly development, helps us to achieve carbon neutrality and becoming net zero by 2030, as well as protecting and enhancing nature. So, for example, through delivering nature recovery and biodiversity net gain. Maximising the delivery of affordable housing is another primary ambition for the local plan, and that's particularly important given the very high level of housing need within Baines, which is in itself symptomatic of very high house prices in Baines, particularly relative to average incomes. And then finally, the local plan needs to facilitate delivery of sustainable economic development. So really that's about ensuring there's sufficient space available for businesses to grow or new businesses to start, and seeking to provide, therefore, that we can provide the jobs that are needed within our communities. So those are the 4 primary ambitions. If you go to the next slide, please, Mark. So alongside the primary ambitions, there are a number of sort of interrelated other issues which the plan needs to address, and they are numerous as shown on the slide there. So I'll just pull out a few. So in the top left of the slide, through the planning system, we have to be able to demonstrate what's called a 5-year supply of housing land, and that's necessary to make sure that we can retain control over the form and location of housing development within the district. So the local plan needs to facilitate delivery of the right amount and the right types of housing to meet our social and economic needs. So that's not just related to affordable housing, but also the needs of an ageing population, as well as those with other supported living requirements. And I should say it's not just the settled community, but we also need to assess and respond to the needs of gypsies, the travelling community, and boat dwellers as well. And again, the local plan will be looking to do that. It's not all just about delivering development. It's crucially, it's about the quality of development and the resulting places. So we need to make sure that we are creating vibrant, successful, and healthy places in which to live, where housing is supported by the timely provision of infrastructure, and that people primarily move around by walking and cycling and public transport rather than driving in their cars. The interrelationship of these issues, is shown perhaps as an example. Walking and cycling has health benefits as well as helping to tackle climate change. So you can see that the issues are quite interrelated. I mean, we'll also look to help tackle climate change by facilitating the delivery of more renewable energy generating infrastructure across the district, as well as I've already said, protecting and enhancing the quality of our environment and the habitats and species within it. Next slide, please, Mark. So this slide just really summarises the programme for preparing the local plan. So I mean, as a context, I think it's important to remember that the plan deals with a wide range of issues. It needs to be supported by robust evidence and engagement with communities and stakeholders right throughout the process. So as a result of that, the whole process, which is governed by legislation, does take quite a long time, as you can see from this slide, probably around about a total of sort of 3 years. So just to start in the top left, I won't go through all the stages here, but we've just published the launch document for the local plan, and over the next 6 months we'll be progressing sort of evidence gathering and engaging communities in terms of what the key issues and challenges are facing you all, and then from spring next year we'll be working on generating options or alternatives to address the issues, and the culmination of that work will be consulting an options document in autumn of next year. So that's stage 3 on the slide there. So following consultation on the options, we then start work, doing further work and considering the comments that have been raised as we move towards preparing a draft plan, and that draft plan is then going to be subject to public consultation in the summer of 2024. So that's stage 5 on that programme. And then the draft plan and all of the comments that we receive then need to be what's called examined by a planning inspector, and that planning inspector is independent of the council and appointed by government, and the examination of the plan is anticipated to take place later in 2024 through to the start of 2025. And then the final stage of the process really is that we would then get a report from the inspector outlining his or her conclusions, and then hopefully the council will be in a position to adopt the plan in sort of September of 2025. Once it's adopted, it then becomes the statutory basis for determining all planning applications and planning decisions within Bath North East Somerset. So that's a quick canter through the programme. If you want to go to the next slide, please, Mark. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Cara, and she's just going to run us through some of the evidence base that supports the plan.
Thank you very much. I'm Kauru Jakes. I'm from Planning Policy, and my apologies, our videos are not working, but yeah, so I will just explain a little bit about evidence base and examination process. So it's as Richard mentioned, all this preparation of considering options, considering evidence-based options. So then we will submit the plan to the Secretary of State. So then it will be examined by independent inspector. Then, so that when an independent inspector assesses our plan, he or she will look at the soundness test. So if the plan is sound, if the plan is positively prepared, so that means we identify needs of the district, then our plan will meet these needs. So then the evidence preparation is quite important to establish these needs. And the plan is justified. So that's the plan set out an appropriate strategy, testing reasonable alternatives and based on proportionate evidence. I will come back to this evidence base. So then the plan is effective. So plans should be ambitious, but also have to be deliverable over the plan period. And also the plan have to be consistent with national policy. So enable the delivery of sustainable development. So the plan will be tested by sustainability objectives. We have a sort of assessment process called sustainability appraisal. Then through the sustainability appraisal, we establish the sustainability objectives responding to issues we have in a district. So then to make sure our plan support delivery or sustainable development. Can I have a next slide, please, Mark? Thank you. So as Richard said, the plan covers a whole range of topics because this is a primary planning document. It has to cover quite a range of topics. And so we have like evidence-based to tackle climate change. And also it's all about biodiversity net gain, health and well-beings, and all through this evidence gathering. And so we will commission some studies. Then, for example, it's a housing need. So we will commission local housing need assessment. Then this local housing need assessment will set out, come up with the overall housing needs, and also discuss what type of housing we need in the district. So then a new local plan will respond to that. And also economic development. The council is producing or preparing economic strategies as well. So the local plan will respond to all the measures include in the economic strategy. So is that we cover all this range of topics, and also the key thing is new development have to be supported by infrastructure. So we will have infrastructure assessment, and that will be integrated in the plan. And also you have to be viable and deliverable. So we will have a viability testing as well. So it's a whole range of topic. So, but through the consultation, if any of you have any views on policies we should have, which policies should be included in the plan, we really appreciate if you could send comments on the new topic area. Also, is the evidence base you think we need to prepare? Thank you. So at this point, I'm going to ask my colleagues Alice to go through. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Carrie. Yes, I'm going to talk to you about the engagement and consultation that we're going to be doing in relation to the preparation of the plan. We have, as you know, just published the launch document to marks the start of the local plan preparation process, and we're asking for comments on that, which sort of cover the content of the document. There's an online questionnaire on our website which we'd really appreciate you filling in, which sort of asks various questions about the content, but it also leaves space for more general comments and queries. So yeah, if you could have a look at that, that would be great. And then alongside the launch document, we've also published an engagement and communication strategy. And that sets out how communities and stakeholders can be involved in the preparation of the plan. And so we'd also really appreciate if you had time to take a look at that, and if you have any comments on queries, then please do add them to the general comments when you're filling in the questionnaire about the launch document. We're going to be opening a call for potential development sites in a couple of weeks' time. And that's a sort of public request to identify sites or general broad locations within the district which might be suitable for various types of development, like housing or economic uses or other uses. But just over the next couple of slides, I'll just run through a short summary of the engagement and consultation that we're planning, and it'll give you an idea of when and how different stakeholders can be involved. So in terms of the engagement we're proposing over the coming year, starting now and running through to September 2023, we're proposing a place-based approach to engagement with targeted engagement carried out with various groups and stakeholders. So what we've done is we've split the district into areas. Those areas are Bath and its environs, Keynsham and Salford, Whitchurch, Hicksgate, Summer Valley, and the district's rural communities. And what we'll be doing is holding facilitated workshops with parish and town councils, community representatives and stakeholders in each of the areas. And the first workshops will be, I think we're looking to do them in January 2023, and the aim of those will be to identify key issues and priorities for each place. And then we'll look to do further workshops in summer 2023, which will start looking at the formulation of policy options relating to each of the places. We're in the process of collating a list of stakeholders who might want to be involved in the workshops for each of the places. And if you have any suggestions, please do pop them into the online consultation questionnaire. One of the questions does provide a place to make those suggestions, so that would be really helpful for us. We're also carrying out engagement with representatives of seldom heard groups, and we're going to be taking advice from an engagement specialist as to the most effective ways to reach as many people as possible. The seldom heard groups that we're looking to speak to are on your screen there, but I'll just run through them there. Young people, ethnic groups, faith communities, disabled people, gypsies and travellers, and small business owners. We're also going to be engaging with statutory consultees as we kind of build up the evidence base for the district, and as we start looking at formulating policy options. So examples of those consultees would be the Environment Agency, Historic England, and Natural England. And we're also going to be engaging with prescribed duty to cooperate bodies on the strategic planning issues which cross over administrative boundaries. So that's not just issues in Baines, it's the issues that cover the wider areas. So issues might be like strategic highways issues, and also things like strategic flooding issues. And then following on from the call for sites that I mentioned earlier, we're also going to be engaging with landowners and their representatives, and that will be to discuss the suitability of sites for development once they've been submitted for the call for sites. You have the next slide there, Mark. Thank you. And then in October next year, we're going to be launching a district-wide consultation on policy options. And at that point, anybody will be able to submit comments. And we plan on holding some various topic-based or place-based webinars just to ensure that any interested parties understand the options being presented. So that'll be a chance for anybody to submit comments on the options, the policy options being put forward. And if we have the next slide there, Mark. Thank you. And then at the beginning of 2024, we're proposing some additional targeted community engagement, and that will be to feedback responses from the options consultation and to discuss preferred options. And then once we've drafted a draft plan, once that's been prepared, we'll hold another district-wide consultation asking for comments on its content. And again, that will be a chance for anybody to comment on the draft plan. So that will be in summer 2024. And then any representations that are received at that stage during the draft plan consultation, they'll all be submitted to the independent inspector, who will be tasked with examining the local plan. You have the next slide there, please, Mark. Thank you. That's the last slide here. So just to wrap up, we'd really like to hear from as many people as possible throughout the whole process, and that's starting off with this launch document consultation. So the consultation is now open and it runs until the 15th of November, and it can be accessed using the web address on your screens there. We do ask that you use the web questionnaire to submit your comments if possible, but if you are unable to do that, then I've just popped the policy email address, telephone number and postal address on your screens as well, so do get in touch that way. So that's the end of the presentation. I think we've had some questions submitted, so I'll hand back to Mark and he can ask us some of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice, Carrie and Richard. As pointed out, unfortunately, we do have a few technical issues where it's just myself on the screen today. The video is not working for everyone else, but I'm sure everyone else is, you're able to hear everybody, and I've got a good list of questions which have been submitted already, which we'll be running through. The first one I've got is for Richard. Richard, the first question is, why should people get involved in the preparation of the local plan?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, it's really important, really. I'd say to everybody, really important to get involved. We want to hear from you really about what the key issues are that need to be addressed and how we should address them, including, you know, what types of development should come forward and where. So, you know, in short, this is your summary to influence the plan for the future and the direction of planning and development decisions over the next 15 to 20 years. So, yes, please do comment on the launch document, and please do continue to be engaged and involved in the preparation as it progresses. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, I think this one will be staying with you, Richard. The next question is, could traffic reduction in urban areas be included in the central policy aims, as this is not necessarily covered by the first aim, responding to the challenge of climate emergency and facilitating the goal of net zero carbon by 2030?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. You know, that again is it's a very good question. I suppose I would say that traffic reduction in urban areas is quite a specific policy aim, and I would say it probably does come under the umbrella of or is covered by a number of the primary ambitions and other issues that we've outlined in the launch document. So that would include, you know, responding to the challenge of the climate emergency, creating vibrant towns and city centres, maximising movement by sustainable transport, etc. So, I mean, we will be working very closely with the council's transport team, really to collect evidence and look at the different ways in which those objectives can be met, including reducing the traffic in urban areas. As I say, encouraging movement by sustainable modes of transport will be very much central to the local plan. I should say, of course, the launch document, you know, it does set out just the council's initial view of what the sort of primary ambitions or priorities of the plan should be. So again, I would encourage anybody, you know, that considers we've not quite got it right, or that there could be changes to that, please do send your comments in, and as Alice has outlined, if you could do that using the online questionnaire, that would be much appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks. Moving to our next question, I think this one is probably for you, Keru. The local plan partial update hasn't yet been adopted. Why are you starting a new local plan already?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes, the key point is we want to make sure we have continued up-to-date planning framework for the district through the short to long term. So it's, as Richard mentioned earlier, current planning document, a development plan, is a core strategy and placemaking plan. So they were adopted 2014 and 2017. So it's a quite long time ago. Then the plan period is up to 2029. And but we council declared climate emergency, ecological emergency, and also set the carbon neutral by 2030. So that is really important and urgent issues. So we the council decided to do the local plan partial update to respond to this urgent issues. So that is the nearly the end of process. Partial update. We already had the hearings. Then now we're doing final consultation, and so then we are anticipating to adopt January next year. So that is the sort of a targeted review. Then now we are starting a new local plan to make sure we review the whole planning framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Keru. Next question is, how will the new local plan impact on existing neighbourhood plans? Will communities need to update neighbourhood plans, and will the council be assisting them with this?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one, Mark. Yeah, I mean, neighbourhood plans need to conform with the strategic or really the key policies in a local plan that's set out nationally. So for those the communities that have a neighbourhood plan in place now, yes, they should be reviewed and may then need to be updated in order to reflect the new local plan, to make sure that there still is that conformity. So, I mean, I would suggest that process of reviewing and updating a neighbourhood plan is undertaken alongside the preparation of our local plan. And, you know, in short, the council will provide advice and support to parishes and other neighbourhood designated neighbourhood forums. Will provide that support in assisting you with that process.
That's great, thank you, Richard. I've got a question here that was submitted regarding it was from somebody from the Baines Allotment Association, and it's: why is the protection and enhancement of the historical environment not one of the main aims? The protection of the significance of World Heritage Site and the many historical buildings and spaces across the district is fundamental to economic future of the area and also to many of the other objectives of the plan. It should not be characterized by calling it another aim.
Yeah, I can pick that one up. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, the council sort of set out what it considers to be the 4 primary ambitions for the plan, and they relate to the climate and ecological emergency, and providing affordable homes and jobs. But the other issues in the launch document are, of course, fundamentally important as well, and the importance of protecting the historic environment, including the significance of the World Heritage Site and all the other heritage assets in the district. It is, of course, really, really important. All of the primary ambitions and the other issues, we've called them other issues. It may be that we need to change the term that we use for those. They're all interlinked, and the local plan will need to consider and sort of balance how best to meet all of those objectives in a balanced way. So I'd say that the launch document, it sets out the council's initial view, but we of course welcome your comments and on those ambitions and on the priorities for the local plan, and we can sort of reflect on those as we take the local plan forward. And as just to reiterate, it would be really useful if you could pop onto the online form. There is a question relating to the primary ambitions and what people think should be the primary ambitions. So if you could fill that in, that would be really useful. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. Moving on, our next question is, one of the council's priorities relates to health and well-being. How will the local plan address this?
Yeah, I can pick that one up as well. Thanks, Mark. We're working really closely at the moment with our colleagues in public health, and they're preparing a strategy called the Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and that covers the whole district. I guess the aims and objectives that stem from that strategy will be, where they're relevant to the local plan, they'll be used as a basis for objectives in the local plan. And the health and wellbeing strategy, that'll make up part of the evidence base for the plan. So we as a policy team will need to consider how the policies in the local plan might address the issues and objectives in that health and wellbeing strategy. So it's sort of cross-working with public health. Hope that answers that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. We have a question here. Shouldn't the council's journey to net zero adopted policy or its successors be incorporated into the local plan? I think
I'll pick that one up, Mark. Yeah, I mean, yes, the objectives and initiatives set out in the Journey to Net Zero plan will be crucial in informing and underpinning the policy approaches in the local plan. So spatial planning policy is set out in the local plan, and transport strategy is including the council's Journey to Net Zero. They need to work together really in moving towards sustainable means of transport. You know, as we've already said, that then links back to and is part of the objective of achieving carbon neutrality in BAME. So in short, yeah, the transport strategies and the local plan need to work together.
Thank you, Richard. Alice, I think you may have touched upon this question in your presentation. It's has a date been set for the call for sites? And also, will the Green Belt review form part of the evidence base?
Yes, I can pick up the call for sites question. We haven't set a date yet, but it'll be in early November. Yeah, we don't have a specific date, but there is a page on our website where you can sign up to be informed when it opens. Our web team's working on setting up a page where parties can draw out the boundary of a site on a map and submit that to us. So it should make the process much easier to submit. So hopefully that will be useful. But yes, as I say, if you sign up on the web page, you'll be able to be notified when that opens. It's just worth noting there actually that any sites that we already have in our HELA, which is the Housing and Economic Land Availability Assessment, they'll be carried forward. So there's no need to resubmit those sites as part of this call for sites if it's already within the HELA. And I'll pass over to Richard, I think, for the Greenbelt assessment question, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine, Alice. Yes, I mean, through the local plan, we will be undertaking a district-wide, I prefer to call it assessment of the Greenbelt, really, you know, to understand, I suppose, the extent to which different areas of the Greenbelt fulfil the sort of purposes set out in national policy, and then aligned with that Greenbelt assessment and work on the sort of spatial strategy and looking at where development could be incorporated, then yes, it may well be necessary then to look at and review Greenbelt boundaries in specific parts of the district.
Thank you, Richard. A very short one here. I'm not sure who will pick this one up. It's just a quick question of what is meant by proportional evidence, what it means.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I suppose it's really making sure that in preparing the plan that we have sufficient evidence related to the sort of key issues that we're looking to address in the plan. So it kind of means, you know, you don't need evidence on absolutely everything. It's just evidence to support you know, the issues that we're looking to address and the policies we're seeking to take.
Excellent, thank you. My next question, bear with me, this is quite a long question, so I'll just read it out in full, so you can take it in. How, given the heightened awareness of the importance of local food growing and food security, can the local plan truly secure adequate allotment provision? It seems that Section 106 monies apportioned to allotments is not being spent on creating new allotments close to where they're needed due to the lack of land available. Surely it should be therefore a requirement for development to contain sufficient good quality food growing space within development sites, and the management of such spaces is secured over the long term by these new allotments being handed over to the local authority or another mechanism such as a trust. I think maybe, would that be one for you, Carew?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I can take that. So yeah, absolutely. The provision of local food growing places, that's very important. Then council's aim is to improve people's lives. So this allotment or food growing places that has more benefit. So that will help to improve people's health and well-beings. So that's a very important issue. So this will be considered through the preparation of a new local plan. And so the question mentioned about the Section 106 developers contribution, but yeah, definitely. So when we allocate sites for new development, we will consider all different type of all range of development requirements which a new development can address. So certainly this local food growing places, they will be considered alongside the other requirements for the new development. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Richard, you have an answer to this question, because I know that there was a similar answer to this asked at some of the forum meetings that you've attended. It says no mention was made today in the presentation of the duty to cooperate between local authorities in the west of England. Does this duty still exist? And if so, will this two-way process, i.e. the Bristol may have housing shortfall, but it could be inappropriate for other local authorities to pick it up with increasing their housing targets?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, I probably should have made reference to it more clearly in the presentation. I think I did talk about the authorities working together on their local plan. So, I mean, in short, the duty to cooperate does still exist. So that duty really requires that that each authority works with its neighbouring authorities in an ongoing and constructive way on their respective local plans, as well as that duty to cooperate also applies to a number of other what are called prescribed bodies, and they're set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. So the duty does still apply. And yes, it is a two-way process, because it's a duty to cooperate on each authority's plan. In terms of the sort of unmet housing need from Bristol point, if there is unmet housing need arising in Bristol that can't be met within Bristol City Council's administrative area, then Bristol, through the duty to cooperate, will in effect formally request that its neighbouring authorities, i.e. ourselves, South Gloucester and North Somerset, that we formally consider whether we can help, respond to that need and help address that need. So that is something that we would need to consider in preparing our local plan. So we will have to consider not only can we meet the housing needed within Baines, but can we also contribute to meeting any unmet need arising from Bristol?
Thank you, Richard. Okay, we've still got quite a few questions to go through. We've still got about 15 minutes left on this webinar, so we'll get through as many as we can for you. The next one is, well, encouragement of active travel rather than by car is commendable. Surely greater emphasis should be given to walking and to the development of long-term segregated pedestrians' right of way as sites come forward for development, especially on the river sides.
Thanks, Mark. I mean, I can pick that one up as well. I suppose, firstly, within the context of the local plan, the sort of references we make to active travel, that encompasses both cycling and walking. The launch document also references the importance of seeking to adopt the concept of 15-minute neighbourhoods, and that again in itself is pedestrian or walking based. So encouraging both walking and cycling will be absolutely central to the plan. I suppose what I would say at this stage is the means by which walking and cycling is encouraged or facilitated, that will be considered as the local plan progresses, and may include, as the question asked, may include developing and improving segregated pedestrian paths and cycle paths linked to new development. But that's something we will need to look at as a council as the local plan progresses. Again, as I think I've said before, alongside and linked to the work that the council will be doing on its various transport strategies as well.
Thank you, Richard. Next question is quite a short question, but a very big topic. What will the local plan be doing to tackle the climate emergency?
Okay, I can take that. Yeah, so as I mentioned, the local plan partial update. Update was targeted review, and one of the key policies partial update introduces is zero carbon requirement. So the new development have to meet net zero carbon. And also it's biodiversity net gain of 10%. So this biodiversity net gain requirement become mandatory, the national mandatory next year, but we are introducing in advance of this national requirement because of the council declaration of the ecological emergency. So it's we are sort of taking a step approach. So partial updates, we introduce zero carbon development, biodiversity net gain. So then we review, we operate these policies, then learn from it, then we will review and set the new policies through new local plan. So we are taking kind of a stepped approach to address this climate emergency and ecological emergency issues.
Thank you, Carrie. Next question is probably quite a topical one at the moment. The current local plan requires a certain percentage of new houses to be affordable, but lots of people who are not eligible for these can't afford to buy houses either, like younger people. Is there anything that the local plan can do to offer extra help to these people?
Thanks, Mark. I can pick that one up. Yeah, that is an interesting question. The council is, we're looking to progress a piece of work which assesses just that, actually. So what we want to try and understand is how many people are in a situation where they're not eligible for affordable housing as defined in national policy, but also they can't afford to live in the district or in the city. And so the piece of work that we're carrying out will hopefully be able to sort of provide us with some evidence on that, and then the local plan will need to consider the evidence and the numbers and see whether there are any sort of policies which could address the issue, and that will probably in terms of sort of the type of housing proposed across the district. So yes, it is something that we're looking at, and yeah, it is a piece of work that we're looking to carry out.
Thank you, Alice. There's a comment been made in the chat, and I'll just raise this because I know that it was raised at a previous meeting, and I believe Richard dealt with this question in the Bath City Forum. It's how would self-identifying stakeholders give Bath people an equivalent quality and extent to the consultation to those who are living in parish parts of Baines, where parish councils have statutory rights of consultation, complementing those of local people? Doesn't it give a greater weight of influence to bodies that are often wholly and partly commercial and not democratic representative of the community? Are you okay to pick that one up, Richard?
Yeah, I'll pick that one up, Mark. Yeah, I mean, I suppose, yes, I mean, first in terms of sort of community representatives, representative groups, obviously parish councils are democratically elected, and hence why there's quite a focus on engaging with parish councils in the sort of parish parts of the district. But yes, in terms of Bath, absolutely the council needs to ensure that it is engaging fully with the communities and residents of the city, and we are looking at the best way that we can do that. Alice mentioned in the presentation that the initial engagement with communities will be, almost a targeted approach, whereby we work with sort of representative groups, and I suppose determining those groups in relation to Bath is something that the council is still looking at, but rest assured, yes, we will be making sure we do engage properly and fully with the communities in Bath, as well as the business interests and other interests that were referenced in the question.
Thank you, Richard. Next question is, how will the new local plan protect existing jobs and help create new jobs?
Okay, I can take that, Mark. Yeah. So
Thank you, Chris.
yes, that's that is very important again. Yeah, so it's a new local plan will set sort of employment policies, maybe set the overall target for job creation, and also the policy to protect office, industrial land based on the evidence. And one of the key evidence base we are preparing is the local employment spatial need assessment. So then that's this assessment will set out employment job growth target numbers based on the different sectors. So it looks at how our economy grown and how developing, where we're going. So then they will set sort of sector-based growth. So then, of course, there's all businesses, office or industrial, they have a different spatial requirement. Then the new local plan will respond and set the employment policies as well as allocating new policies, allocating new sites, depending on the evidence. So once we have evidence base, then we can share that with you, with everybody on the website. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question is, the government have said that they will be announcing changes to the planning system. Will these be taken into account while preparing the new local plan?
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I can pick that one up. So I think I've probably already said that local plans are required to conform with national policy. As the question suggests there have been quite a lot of recent government announcements about potential changes to the planning system, primarily aimed at facilitating growth. As these announcements and changes, if and when they find their way into national policy, then we will need to take them into account and reflect them in the local plan. The preparation programme that, again, we outlined in the presentation is such that it does allow for that process to take place. So, yeah, in short, any changes to the planning system that find their way into national policy, we will have to reflect those in the local plan. Yeah.
And just following on from that, we had a sort of question which fits in quite nicely with that other question is, will the government's housing targets have a bearing on the local plan? And will you be seeking a lower target than the standard method due to the large amount of green belts in Baines?
Yeah, again, good question. So the current sort of national policy, the current system is that in assessing the level of housing need, authorities must use the standard method as the starting point. So that's part of the process. So that's assessing the need for housing, and then through the preparation of the local plan, the council will be responding to and determining whether it can meet that full need. Or, as the question suggests, I think that if the council considers the circumstances within the district, including things like the high quality of the environment and the environmental constraints, if the council considers that there's strong justification for not meeting the full need, then that would be taken into account in setting the housing requirement for the plan. I should also just add to that, as we discussed it earlier around the duty to cooperate, if we end up in a position within Baines where we consider we can't meet all of the identified need within Baines, we would then in effect have to, through the duty to cooperate, have that discussion with our neighbouring authorities as to whether they would be prepared or whether they could accommodate an element of our unmet need. So it is quite a complex process. I hope that's explained it clearly enough. yeah, I can't really say any more on it at the moment, I don't think, Mark.
Okay. And again, sticking with housing, but the local plan is going to propose a lot of new homes in the area. How are you going to make sure this doesn't have an effect on increasing traffic pollution and congestion in the area?
Thanks, Mark. I think that's probably linked, isn't it, a little bit to a number of questions I've picked up. So, yeah, as the question suggests, yeah, obviously the local plan will be seeking to facilitate delivery of you know, quite a lot of housing, probably to meet the needs. And in doing that, the council will need to undertake and will be undertaking a lot of work to consider and assess the transport impacts of that development, both at individual locations or options, but also cumulatively across the whole of the district, and also taking into account the impact of development in neighbouring authorities as well, because you know that cumulatively that's going to have an impact on the transport network as well. The objective, you know, of addressing the congestion impacts and associated effects on air quality of that development will be, yeah, an absolutely fundamental aspect of the local plan. So, for example, that, you know, those congestion impacts can hopefully be addressed, you know, through the form and location of new housing, so that it does maximise the opportunities for walking and cycling to use local services and facilities, the use of walking and cycling and public transport to access jobs, etc. So, yeah, in short, we will be assessing the transport impacts of development and seeking to minimise, obviously, the impacts on congestion.
Excellent, thank you, Richard. We've got through an awful lot of questions there today, and just to let people know that we have recorded the webinar and it will be put onto the council's YouTube channel should anybody want to go back and listen to any of it again, or pass on the link to anyone that may not have been able to make today's initial webinar for this launch. Thank you, Alice, Carew and Richard. That's been fantastic to get so many answers to those questions. Do any of you have any closing comments you want to just make in the last minute or two?
Simply to thank all of those that are online now. Thank you for attending, and again to encourage everyone to, you know, read the launch document, and if you've got any comments on it, please do make sure you submit those to us before the 15th of November. Thanks.
What one final point, Richard, will slides that were shown today be available anywhere for people to reference back to at all?
Yeah, I don't see why we can't publish those on the website, on the sort of local plan web pages. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Lovely.
Okay, I think that's probably everything then. Again, like Richard says, thank you for everyone for attending today, and have a good afternoon.